YouTube, welcome back. This is November 2023 development updates. We're going to go over this along with Twitch chat, so I will be talking to Twitch chat during this video, but I figure as long as I'm updating them on this dev post right here and talking about the CT stuff, which I can't talk about, so I'll be saying very little except for the fact that I am part of the CT program, but we'll get there. As long as I'm talking to them, I might as well also talk to you. So this came out today, and it's really good news. There's some information here that you might already know about, and then there's some new information too. So let's go over it. Let's make it a tiny bit bigger, keep my face in the corner, and then scroll down. So we know that there's a date. If the end of February of 2024 will be the official 1.0 launch of Last Epoch. We know that it's going to have Falconer, it'll have Warlock. We know it'll have an update to one of the masteries, which we'll get to later in this discussion here. And then it'll have item factions. Anything beyond that, we don't really know about. We can speculate, but those are like the four things that were public knowledge. Three of them super public, and one of them the devs have told us about before, but we'll get there. It's Shaman, but we'll get there. Scroll down. There was a trailer that they released via IGN.
And it's
There's no gameplay in it, but it's very pretty. It's hype. It's got the
you must not fall. Uncover the past.
it's got good music in it. But let's keep going. Okay, so of course on October 20th, we announced our roadmap. Let's see. So February 21st, 2024. Blah blah blah. Let's take a look down here. So on these websites, we will get a first look at some of the updated stuff. So on lastepoch.com, we'll see trade versus prophecies. We know a little bit what prophecies are because it sounds like they're going to be very similar to prophecies from Path of Exile. We don't know all the details, but that's kind of what they've been hinting at, how they've been describing them so far. If you don't know about trade versus prophecies, especially here in chat, or not trade versus prophecies, but like trade versus factions and whatnot, the factions, there will be two factions. One is the Merchants Guild, one is the Circle of Fortune, COF, and all the details, I've just linked them in Twitch chat. I'll also put that in the video. So it sounds really cool, you know. So next up here is icyveins.com. We'll be previewing the Warlock. The Warlock is the third mastery choice for Acolyte. We don't know much about it yet, but the teaser information has always been like, it's got something to do with curses. So maybe that'll be fun. Next up is Falconer. Falconer is the third mastery for Rogue. So you have Blade Dancer, Marksman, and now this. We don't really know what's going on with Falcons, but we shall see over on maxroll.gg. And then, of course, February 21st will be the 1.0 launch. So I will be no-lifing, and my wife will be a little bit sad about it, but she's already told me that it's okay. So hopefully it continues to be okay. Let's see. I'll scroll down here. Everybody supports us. Community-driven exclusives. We love you guys so much. This roadmap is not an exhaustive list. It's true. This roadmap shows the dates for when you can expect to get more information on the three headlining features, item factions, Warlock, and Falconer, like I said at the top of this video. Let's see, for this, we have the Bazaar, which is associated with the Merchants Guild, some kind of trading stuff that goes on there. Circle of Fortune and Prophecies. Prophecies are like the counterpart of Bazaar. Helps like farming items be easier if you're like a solo player who doesn't want to trade. Let's go with this. Longtime fan of the Acolyte class, a huge supporter of Last Epoch. We're excited to see what Aaron and Icy Veins have in store for the reveal. Cool. I guess Aaron Action RPG is doing that. Neat. As a note, Warlock will be coming with a 1.0 update. Neat. For Falconer, maxwell.gg, we're happy to be rejoining them with our official partnership. Some of our hardest going community members will be representing Maxwell for this reveal. We know no interaction will be left unturned. Cool. So not much information. They're just telling you that this is going to happen. For the 1.0 launch, it's going to happen. We're so happy. Awesome. Let's keep scrolling. I get it. Blah, blah, blah. We're happy. Perry couldn't possibly be more excited. Blah, blah, blah. Keep going. Let's scroll down here. If you haven't already done this, you know, like I haven't already done this, we could even do this on stream. That could be kind of exciting. But things you wish you knew as a new player, you could provide feedback to EHG, and maybe some of that information would make the new player experience better in the future. So that's here. That's neat. There's a couple of new things that are coming our way that they haven't sold as headlining features. Shaman's one of them. We'll get to that point though. But let's talk about the lighting and shadows. Lighting and shadows, in my experience, having walked into zones that look like this, look very good. So I'm glad to see that this is changing. Historically, many of our scenes felt a bit floaty, with characters and objects not grounded in the way that we wish they were. A big part of this issue was missing good contact shadows and shadows in general. There are many reasons why this is not as simple to solve as it may look. Performance is a big reason for this. One of the systems we improved for 1.0 is ambient occlusion, so shadow stuff. In addition to the ambient occlusion improvements, we're also adding a modern screen space soft shadow system. What this means is the game looks good, so you're going to be excited. It's great. Good change. Here's our end of time example. So it used to be nice and bright, and now it's harder to see. It looks good, but like, it's darker. Let's keep scrolling here. Scene variant system. Some of the major systems they're introducing. In the past, it was hard for us to create different variants of a scene, having different weather effects or changing our vegetation. Now the areas look slightly different every once in a while. So last but not least, brings us to more variety in the game. For example, monolith scenes could look different. You can see here, you might have some grassy wheat. You might have some green grass. You might have red grass. You might have some... Where's the rain? Come on. Keep going. Where's the rain? Wasn't there a rainy bit a second ago? I thought there was. There's the rain. It's got some rainy bits going on. So, whoa, warm rain. It's a thunderstorm. So that's cool. Let's keep scrolling. Holy moly, there's a shaman stuff going on here. We've heard the feedback that the shaman's been garbage for 3-4 years. So it is not a total rework of shaman. Shaman will be getting more love in the future, but there will be an update to shaman. So with this revisit to shaman, we won't be doing a complete rework, like I just said. Some aspects will be updated. That's cool. The changes still a work in progress. Today's post will be speaking a short bit on the improvements to shaman. The reworked Tempest Strike skill. Tempest Strike being one of the worst skills in the game. Pretty cool. Let's see what they have to say about it. Tempest Strike in its current implemented form is a spammable melee skill that is... So current Tempest Strike scales with attack speed, but not by giving you attack speed. So it's clunky. People basically only use it for a mana generator. People have technically taken it all the way to 300 corruption. It's basically a noob trap. It is a feel bad skill, and it is a travesty that the idea of this skill is trapped behind something that feels so clunky. So lots of people have written lots of paragraphs about why they don't like Tempest Strike. Let's keep reading. Being a hybrid skill with both attack and spell features, with the spell procs not being the most reliable, on purpose, and the lack of attack speed scaling, on purpose for some reason, Tempest Strike has been in a fairly rough spot. Even the devs make fun of it. As such, Tempest Strike is getting a complete rework for 1.0, keeping the same name and theme, but with completely new mechanics, a new skill tree, and even a role as a skill. You see, in the past, it wasn't a skill, but in the future, they're thinking about having it as a skill. So, good for them. 1.0, Tempest Strike will instead be a powerful, high-cost combo ability. We know that high-cost abilities are so good in Last Epoch. Each strike of your weapon, Tempest Strike, will flow through launching, penetrating icicles, creating tornadoes, expanding rings of lightning. In its tree, you'll find the ability to specialize into each of these strikes, making them more powerful or removing them for other benefits. You'll also find the reworked Tempest Strike will be quite favorable to building attack speed. It doesn't say it'll scale your attack speed with attack speed. It could say that. It could mean that. You'll also find the rework Tempest Strike will be allowing you to rage an elemental storm through hordes of enemies with a whole new suite of animations and VFX. Speaking of storms, this change to Tempest Strike leaves a vacancy within Primalist for a low-cost generator or filler skill tailored toward Shaman, but that's a story for another time as we get closer to 1.0. So, this is very cool. It's not one of the headlining features of 1.0, but to me, it's very interesting. Next up is something that should be interesting to all sorts of people. So let's slow down. Let's sit up in my seat a little bit, and we'll talk about the Endgame rebalance. There's two important things here. You can see the headlines are echo modifiers and corruption changes. So let's just read, and then if Twitch has questions, we can talk about them. But this is, if you know Carve from the world of Path of Exile, Carveroski, however you pronounce that name, he's the mastermind behind this. So if it sucks, you know who to talk to. With echo modifiers, we wanted to focus on the enemy power coming less from the modifiers themselves and more from the inherent strength of high-level enemies and corruption directly. What this means, pause. Last Epoch currently has an issue where communicating between new players and experienced players, or even communicating between experienced players and experienced players, if you say, I can kill a boss at 1,000 corruption, you really don't know what that means. Because 1,000 corruption isn't nearly as important as the modifiers and how many modifiers you have stacked up on that boss. That is so much more important than the corruption itself. So saying that, like, I'm struggling at 200 corruption, if a new player says that, you really don't know what that means. Is their build garbage? Maybe. Are they taking like 6 modifiers in a row that all say monsters deal increased damage, monsters deal increased damage, monsters deal increased damage, monsters deal increased damage? Because if a new player stacks up 6 of those, that 200 corruption modifier or echo could be more difficult than like 900 corruption. So that difficulty in communication is one of the core issues with this. Let's keep going. The goal of these changes are primarily to achieve a more predictable experience in high corruption timelines. To achieve this, we made echo modifiers have shorter durations, now lasting a maximum of 3 instead of 6. And importantly, made these mods no longer scale with corruption or distance from the center. What that means is things like chance to avoid crits, dodge, percent increased elemental damage, armor shred, which used to scale up to like 400% chance or something to shred armor on hit. All of those no longer scale up numerically with corruption. It's a big deal. Next up, as we dove into echo modifiers, there's a number of modifiers which scaled invisibly with corruption, including enemies enraging at half health, enemies having high speed and crit chance until approach, and enemies are deadly until not damaged recently, including, I think regen was one of these too that scaled invisibly. I think so. These mods actually scaled at the same rate as increased damage modifiers, which, if you're familiar with those modifiers, means they scaled extremely quickly without clearly presenting those that increase in difficulty to the player. This will no longer be the case in 1.0. They will have fixed values alongside all other modifiers, including the infamous increased damage modifiers. This is good clarity here. I like this. We're still tweaking numbers for this and testing the changes, so we're not quite ready to share these numbers. These changes to echo modifiers should make a smoother, more predictable experience. And yes, excellent. Love this. If you are a try-hard person like me, if you played this game for 1,000 hours or even a couple hundred hours, this is impactful information for you. If you're a brand new player, what this means for you is that you will have an easier time communicating with others. You will have more clear information presented to you, and Last Epoch will be a better game. That's all you got to know. Let's scroll down. Next up is something that's pretty exciting. I am a big fan of this. I'm going to hover over something real quick. I'm going to skip this text. We're going to read it, but I'm going to skip this text real quick. This is interesting. Corruption will now slightly scale up the average legendary potential and Weaver's Will values. In the past, in Last Epoch, when you pushed up corruption, what that basically meant is that you were pushing up rarity, and you would have more items drop, and you were pulling the lever on the slot machine more often, and that kind of made it so that you would find higher LP items more often. But corruption didn't really increase LP values, they just increased the number of stuff, and the amount of stuff means that you pull a slot machine more. So corruption was good for trying to find higher LP items in the past, but it didn't directly impact it. So now, remember, we can only have 3 echo modifiers, now lasting a maximum of 3 echoes. So we will have less rarity than we had in the past. And this is one of the couple things that kind of makes up for that slightly less rarity that we're going to have now. So there might be some other systems that come out like this, but this means that as you push corruption up, you will have slightly higher chances to get 1 or 2 or even 3 LP on your items. Weaver's Will value will increase with corruption as well. I think this is a positive change. You're not really sure about this one? We'll talk about it more, but let's go back and read this. So corruption changes. While echo modifiers are getting reined in, we're also shifting some of that power from scaling modifiers directly into corruption scaling. The difficulty modifier from corruption will now directly scale more quickly, meaning that corruption will be the primary method of scaling difficulty, and hitting these points will be a quicker and smoother experience. Of note, when it says hitting these points, this is not a stepwise function. These are not breakpoints. This is a gradual increase in difficulty. For this, we feel like it's important to provide some numbers for context here. However, do remember that these numbers are subject to change. This, at 100 corruption, the monsters will be slightly harder. Currently, they give 50% more health and damage. In the future, they'll give 60%. As you make your way from 100 corruption to 200 corruption, monsters will be 170% more health and damage instead of 100. This, I think you're going to feel this. Because remember, the new 200 corruption is harder than the old 300 corruption. The difficulty is actually going to ramp up in a way that you're going to feel it. I think that's great. Look at this. The new how's this work? 200 the new, because like these numbers are basically the same, right? The new 300 corruption is 500 corruption. Yeah. Look at this. 281, 289. Yeah. The new 300 corruption is the old 500 corruption. It'll take some getting used to, like to get a feel for like, is my build good? Is my build bad? Why am I struggling earlier in the game? I think this is good. I think this is really, really good. Let's scroll down here. One last little section to talk about. With 1.0 being significant, it's great. We heard balance improvements. Everybody wants better performance. Sure. We had to change the number of processes in the community tester program. That's the CT program that I told you about earlier. I'm in that program as well. Managed to get the program up and running just before 092. And we've had CT running for over a week at this point. Yeah, a week ago they said. They started adjusting some things based on the feedback from people like me and everyone else who's in the CT program. Currently, the program is not accepting additional members. However, we wanted to provide reassurance that we're always committed to working closely with the community, making sure that we fulfill the cooperation and coordination for these important features. Excellent. Cool. So we've read through this thing. We talked about the high points of the factions, Warlock and Falconer, and then the pseudo high points of the corruption changes, the monolith change, corruption changes, echo modifiers changing, and the shaman, of course. So before I stop recording, is there anything else that we need to like talk about that's important here? Am I excited? Yeah. Yes. Was I right that it would be very hard to be in the CT program and not share information with you? Yeah. I was right. It's exciting stuff that you will enjoy that I can talk about later when it's time to share that with you. There are some funny anecdotes that I think I'll be able to share with you, but it's the kind of funny anecdote that I definitely need to check before I can say publicly. But there's a lot of good stuff going on right now. There's excellent stuff going on right now. Very happy that Last Epoch is like my main video game. I can't wait for February. I'll see you then.